Hello, fellow resistors. Charlie Angus here. Yes, the Resistance Network. And today we launch Midas Canada Network. We're so thrilled. This has been a dream in the making and a lot of work. And we've been figuring out our mistakes as we go along. And we're going to be making a lot more as we continue. But we are going to learn and we are going to grow. And we are so glad that you are with us. At the beginning, I just want to give some shout outs to all the incredible encouragement we've been receiving from all over the globe. James from Huntsville. Charlie Angus, we need Maple Midas. I support you in this fight for democracy. Be loud. Call out the pretenders. We need to help the Americans take back their country from the fascist MAGA maniacs. That's a really profound message that we're getting from James, and I've heard it from many people across Canada. Right now, Canada is very proud. We're very nationalistic. We are willing to wave our flag, but we're not being jingoistic. This isn't chest-beating, dumb patriotism. This is about defending the values of the flag, defending the values of our nation. And part of that is reaching out and supporting our cousins south of the border who are dealing directly with the fascist threat. So thank you, James. Jane writes, I believe we need this in Canada too. We are no longer have progressive conservatism here, just far right reform lunatic loudmouths who need to be countered by a voice that speaks up for the majority of the sane people. Same point, Jane, and to all those Canadians who know that this isn't just some kind of crazed fever south of the border. The MAGA threat in Canada is real. The corrosive role that the far right is playing in dividing us from each other and undermining our elections and literally trying to break our nation apart to feed the right-wing agenda, we're going to call that out. We're going to speak up and we're going to shine a light on the MAGA threat that we are facing in this country right now. From Virginia, we love you, Charlie. You are my brother. I'm very excited about Midas Canada. All the best to you and the Canadians. Thank you to our brothers and sisters in Virginia. And Belinda, sharing, thank you from Texas. Midas Mighty. Midas Mighty indeed. So thanks for everyone for those messages. I also received this message. Je suis très content que vous existiez désormais. S'il vous plaît, faites des vidéos en français. Madame, je vous remercie pour votre soutien. Je suis d'accord avec les nécessités pour aider à la résistance dans la francophonie. Mais notre équipe est très petite, donc soyez patients, s'il vous plaît. I like this one as well. Midas Canada, fighting fascism since 2025. Thanks for being part of this, Charlie. And thanks for fighting for me before I could even say the word politics. Oh my God, is my gray hair showing? Anyways, yes, this is it. 2025, the year that we take our democracy back, the way we take our countries back, and the way we stand up to fascists. This is part of the conversation about Midas Canada is trying to build with Midas Network to build a global conversation. So I'm going to start off with just some of the questions that we received so you get a sense of where we're going to be going with this show. First question, obviously, is why Midas? This is a time of real nationalism in Canada. We have an incredibly strong boycott. We're resisting all things American. And yet, Charlie Angus, why just sign up with a group out of the United States? Well, let me tell you how I got involved in Midas, and it might help to make sense of why we are part of the Midas Network. You know, the morning after the Trump election, I woke up and I knew that things had changed forever. I knew that Donald Trump 2024, 2025 was a very different beast than Donald Trump 2016. This was someone conjured up out of the toxic Ouija board of the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, the disinformation machines, the AI bots, the oligarchs, the Putin troll farms. Trump 2025 was going to be leading a full-on attack on democracy and the rights of individuals and the rule of law. Just how bad it was, I didn't have any idea at the time, but I knew it was going to be bad. So I decided that I was going to spend the rest of the time that I had as a member of parliament. I was finishing up 21 years in Canada's federal parliament, that I was going to use that time to talk about the threat, to try and articulate language, to try and find a way to make sense of this dark and strange landscape that we suddenly woke up into. I decided that in the final months I would have in parliament, That's what I would do in Parliament. I wasn't going to waste my time arguing about some piece of legislation, debating with some dumb conservative who's just reading the talking points he was getting from his MAGA leader, like the sock puppet, Canada's broken, Canada's broken, Canada's broken. I was starting to talk about fascism. I was talking about the threats and how the similarities of the 1930s were too prevalent for us to ignore. I didn't actually expect anyone to pay attention. I mean, I got to admit, after 21 years in Parliament, I realized very few people actually watch the parliamentary debates, which is perfectly fine. But I wanted the words on the record. I felt for this historic moment, someone needed to be saying these things, and I wanted it on the record. That was my focus. And yet, what shocked me is that I started heading out into the communities, being out on the street. People were coming up. They were giving me fist bumps. They were thanking me. Some were holding and saying to me, thank you for speaking up and articulating what we know and what we're seeing, but nobody else is talking about. And I was like, wow, do you guys all watch the Parliamentary Network? They said, no, we watch Midas Touch. I said, what? And then it occurred to me that Midas Touch Network, Ben Masilas and his crew, Ben's down in Los Angeles, they have reached into an important demographic in Canada by talking about truth, by shining a light on what's happening in the undermining of the political realm. And who they're touching are very, very ordinary Canadians. The people who are coming up to me time and time again, retirees, working class, guys and women who'd been in the military, who served their country. These weren't people who watch the evening talking heads and the pundits. And, I'm just going to say it. I think it's been about 6 months since I've been on one of these mainstream media shows, because they're not talking that language. They're still parsing the tea leaves of what's happening nightly with the polling in Ottawa. Is the Prime Minister's cabinet going to do this? Will they do that? I mean, that's all important, but it's missing the bigger picture of the threat to democracy. That's why people aren't tuning into them. They're tuning in to Midas Touch. So when Ben started saying to me, hey, Charlie, we really need to build a Canadian voice so that we can start to build a global conversation, I was struck and I thought, maybe we can do this. So leads to the second question. Are you a branch plan of Midas Touch? Are you going to be, do they got editorial control, blah, blah? No, we are completely independent. We are doing this in the way that we believe. We're telling the stories that we want to tell, but it's really important that we take this space now. We've seen how successful the far right has been, that they work across borders. They have taken the online information space and turned it into a toxic zone of hate. And it's those cross-border alliances. That's what got Bolsonaro elected in Brazil. That's why J.D. Vance was trying to undermine democracy in Romania. That's why Elon Musk was standing and doing shout-outs for the fascists in Germany. And that's why when the German fascist MP came to Canada, she was meeting and getting her picture taken with MAGA Maple Canadian politicians, because they are all working together. This is the threat of Orban in Hungary. This is the Putin troll farms. We've got to take that back. We've got to take this space. That's what Midas Canada is part of, trying to be a global conversation. We're talking to you from my little town, a little mining town up in northern Canada. We're going to talk about Canada, but we're going to talk about it in a global way that we share a conversation. So, to that point, what are we going to talk about? Well, let's talk about the threat. I'd love to reassure you that everything's going to be fine. I'd love to tell you, don't worry, the midterms are coming. The Democrats are going to get their act together. I'd love to tell you that there's going to be a politician who's coming to save us. Nobody's coming to save us. That's the reality in this age of monsters. We're going to have to save ourselves. So we have to be aware of the threat. So we're going to talk about the threat. For example, we saw that Denmark has called the U.S. ambassador to explain covert operations to undermine the sovereignty of Denmark and Greenland. The United States is not acting as an ally anymore. They're acting as a malignant threat. Do we actually think that they aren't threatening us in this way when Donald Trump says we are the meanest, nastiest people he's ever dealt with and that our border can be arbitrarily redrawn? We're going to be shining a light on the MAGA influence in Canada and how dangerous it is. Just recently I came across this report by journalists at Desmog who revealed that Trump's officials offered a $500 million loan to a group of Alberta separatists. This is to break up the country. This is treason. I haven't seen this at all on the national media. We're going to shine a light on these issues. We're going to actually try and investigate the threats that are happening here on the ground, because we know that MAGA is on the move. We just saw Danielle Smith, the premier in Alberta, who's, when she's not busy trying to break up our country and threatening our nation, and going down to Mar-a-Lago to hang out with grifters like Kevin O'Leary, she's got her teams going after books in the Alberta school system, going after Handmaid's Tale, going after 1984, going after Brave New World. These are issues that are happening right now, the MAGA threats here. So we're going to talk about the threat. We're going to talk about what's at stake. Well, obviously what's at stake is the rule of law and democracy. But right now there's 150 Canadians who've been kidnapped in the United States by ICE. We don't know where they're being held. We don't know the conditions. We know that there's at least a number of some children with them. You know, just a few months ago, it was 50 Canadians who'd been kidnapped. Now it's 150. What's it going to be in 2 months? This is as we see a president bragging about building cages and concentration camps in the swamps of Florida, that he talks about people having to outrun alligators and he thinks it's funny. This is a very depraved man who believes that cruelty is the point and the abuse of people is satisfaction enough for MAGA. And those are our citizens that have been kidnapped. And we know that citizens of other countries have also been arbitrarily kidnapped and detained. But we need to shine a light on the Canadians who are being held. And we need to speak up, and we need to push our elected officials not to be afraid to stand up to the MAGA threat. Because as you've seen all the gangster movies, you know, if you don't stand up to the good fellas, they keep coming back for more. And right now they're taking our people off the streets when they're in the United States and kidnapping them. And that's not acceptable. So another question, why did we launch on Labor Day? Well, I want to talk about that. That's a very important issue for me because, you know, Ben Masilas, when we were talking, he really wanted to get us off the ground. He said, come on, let's go, guys, let's go. But Labor Day to me is a really important day to launch because Labor Day reminds us of where we're from and where we need to go. You know, I come from mining country. I come from hard rock mining towns. My family were miners. The labor story is important because we didn't just get here. This isn't just some blank slate that created Donald Trump. The attack on organized labor that's been going on, particularly in the United States and in the UK, has created the conditions that we're in. I'm going to read you a quote from Paul Mason's book, Post-Capitalism. I think it's really instructive. The destruction of labor's bargaining power was the essence of the entire neoliberal project. It was a means to all other ends. Neoliberalism's guiding principle is not free markets, nor fiscal discipline, nor sound money, nor privatization and offshoring, not even globalization. All these things were byproducts or weapons of its main endeavor to remove organized labor from the equation. And we are going to be talking about putting labor back in the equation. There's incredible stories right now of resistance of workers who are not going to put up with the gig economy, with the precarious wages, with the economic insecurity that's been created by feeding the oligarch class. I want to share a photograph with you that means a lot to me. It's from my region, Kirkland Lake, Ontario, gold mining town. It's from the 1941 strike. It's a photograph of women and children walking and was probably minus 25, minus 30 degree temperatures. Why am I showing the photograph? Well, again, it's why we launched on Labor Day. In 1941, the Kirkland Lake miners finally went on strike. The mines weren't fantastically wealthy, but life was very cheap in those deep mines. And when the miners went on strike, the Premier of Ontario at the time sent up 500 cops, special police, and they told the miners, if you dare march, you are going to pay a heavy price. And the next day, all the women and children of Kirkland Lake marched in a parade of resistance. You know, I've met many people whose aunties, whose grannies, whose mothers walked in that defiant march. And I tell that story today because it suddenly has become very prescient. It's for the times. You know, when we see Donald Trump using National Guard against unarmed civilians in the streets, when we see the fascist threat that's happening around the world, they try to intimidate. They try to tell you that there's no alternative but to go along. That's not true. Resistance has happened. Resistance is happening. And we are going to tell the stories of resistance. They're not going to see them on the evening news, but you're going to see them as we talk about them. Because one of the things that's very key about what we are doing with Midas Canada, about the Resistance Network, is we want to remind you, and we're going to mention this again and again, that in the world of gangster fascists, there's no such thing as a bystander. You are an enabler or a resistor. And being a bystander is a political choice. Now, I know that at times it's very frightening. You don't know how to resist. You don't know how to stand up. I've talked to so many people who have been paralyzed with fear as they watch the chaos unfolding around them. Well, we're actually going to talk to you about how you build resistance. We're going to tell stories of resistance because it's very encouraging to know that there are tools that you can take so that you can be the one standing up in the age of fascism, that you are one of the people who, with more and more and more of us standing together, will push back the fascist threat. What else are we going to do? Well, we are going to celebrate Canada. We're going to celebrate the incredible people here, the resilience of the people, the determination of the people, the incredible, beautiful land of Canada. You know, I was 17, left school, went in a punk rock van with a bunch of other punk rockers to discover Canada. And I've been trying to discover Canada ever since, and I've never lost the love of this nation and the beauty. So we're going to talk about this land and why it's worth defending. And this is, again, not jingoism. This is about us sharing a common values. And we're going to do shout-outs. We're going to do shout-outs to the local heroes. We're going to do shout-outs to the resistors. We're going to promote and cheer on the great spirit that is here, because we know that people in the rest of the world are watching right now the Canadian spirit. And it's a fragile line we're holding, but we're going to damn well hold that line. We are not going to give it up for anything. So to that end, I want to give a big shout out to the crew of the Blue Nose. Now, if you're particularly from the Maritimes, you know the Blue Nose. If you're a Canadian, hell, it's on your dime. On every single dime, the Blue Nose. The great schooner, the great fast ship of Nova Scotia, is a symbol of our nation. You know, my grandfather is a Cape Breton miner, had to go work up in the mines in Timmins. He kept a picture of the Blue Nose on his wall. It was a symbol to him of freedom and of hope. I'm mentioning the Blue Nose crew because they have just announced that they are not going to travel this year to the big racing regattas that are taking place on the eastern seaboard of the United States, because they're going to hold the boycott. They're going to stand with their Canadian brothers and sisters and hold the boycott. Wow. To me, that's such a powerful message. Thank you, Blue Nose. Canadians, give them a shout out. And to that end, I decided, you know, Donald Trump keeps thinking that we are pushovers, and he's learning very quickly how we stand up and we're not pushovers. So I'm just going to send this Blue Nose dime to Donald Trump. See, I got a Charlie Angus resistance card. I've written him a message. Dear Donald, here's a donation of a real Canadian Blue Nose dime. It's all you'll ever get from us. Now piss off. Sincerely, Charlie Angus. And here's the thing. You can send your dimes for Donald to the White House. You write to the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20500. So get to it, my friends. Send those Blue Nose dimes and encourage each other in holding the resistance. We're going to tell a lot of great stories about how the resistance and the boycott's happening. Okay, final question for this first episode. People are asking about the Midas Canada Town Hall resistance tours that we're launching. And we launched the very first Midas Canada Town Hall this Friday night in North Rustico, Prince Edward Island. The fishing village of North Rustico reached out to us and said, Charlie, we are ready for the resistance. You got to come here. So we are going there. September 6th, Charlottetown at the Carrefour Theatre. Where better place to launch the resistance revolution but in the town where Canada was born. So Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, North Rustico. We can't wait to get to Prince Edward Island. We're going to have great local speakers, great music, because of course we have to have music if we're in Prince Edward Island. September 11th, I'll be back in Oshawa. We just had a big rally in Oshawa in the spring, but I'll be at local 222 Unifor Hall, meeting with the auto workers and local representatives, because this is the front line of the trade war with Trump, and we're going to be standing with the auto workers in Oshawa. So September 11th in Oshawa, if you're around. September 12th, I'll be in Port Elgin at the Lakeshore Recreation Center. September 13th, Owen Sound Harmony Center. September 25th, I'll be flying into Saskatchewan to do a public talk at the University of Regina. I encourage people to come out. I wish I could stay longer in the beautiful province of Saskatchewan, but this time it's going to be in and out. October 15th in Peterborough. I want to do, again, a big shout out to folks in Peterborough. I was just there with my band Grievous Angels. Ooh, did I just do a band placement? Damn right I did. Grievous Angels just played the Peterborough Folk Festival, coming back to do the Meidas Canada Town Hall, and they are getting things planned there. Later, October 23rd, 25th, we'll be in British Columbia, Sunshine Coast, Victoria. I'll get you details on that. November 8th, be at the Lunenburg Literary Festival. This is the third time I've tried to get to Lunenburg for the festival, but the two other times I got chased out by hurricanes because, yeah, climate change is starting to impact our regions heavily. I'll be there speaking about my book, Dangerous Memory, Coming of Age in the Decade of Greed. So here's the thing. How do you get a Midas Canada Town Hall? People are asking. Well, we're a super small team here. We need your help on the ground. If you're serious about getting the Midas Canada Town Halls, we need a team on the ground. You're going to need to get your sponsors so we can get the a hall that we can. I got to be able to bring in my crew with me, because we want to film each of these gatherings so that we're sharing, and we're going to do a lot of sharing of stories across Canada. We are going to film each of these events, film our time in the communities, who we meet, so that you're getting a sense of what's happening in other parts of the country. And for our global audience, you'll get a sense of that great Canadian spirit. So if you want to do a Midas Canada Town Hall, you can reach out to our team at midas@charlieangus.ca. But you're going to have a team on the ground ready to go. And then we can talk about if we can make it happen and build a little tour around it. Because we really want to get out there. We want to be telling our stories. We want to be celebrating this nation. We are going to be the resistance. We are here. We are ready to rumble. 2025, as our message we received today, is the year we take back our nation and our democracy and our globe from the fascists. So this is it. First episode of Midas Canada. I'm super excited. We want to celebrate this with you. We are going to keep kicking at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. So, my friends, subscribe. Send your messages on our network. Tell us what you think. We read everything. We want to share your messages with our people. If you think there's ideas out there, let us know. We're completely overwhelmed right now, but we're going to try and do what we can do to build this network of resistance. So, from the resistance team, we are excited. Thank you, my friends. Merci beaucoup, and Megwitch.